Olympic sponsors paid big money for the Beijing Games, so where are all the ads? Hong Kong, Tokyo, CNN Business. Sponsors of the Olympics are walking on tightrope ahead of the Beijing Winter Games next month as worsening geopolitical tensions forces them to consider downplaying their involvement without upsetting China. Political favor in the United States reached a high last month as the White House called for the diplomatic boycott of the Games, a statement against the human rights abuses that Washington has accused Beijing of perpetrating in the country's western Xinjiang region. That's added to pressure on companies such as Coca-Cola, Intel, Visa, and Airbnb, which in recent months have faced calls to cut ties with the event because of Xinjiang. Some politicians have accused the businesses of undermining the ability of their home countries to send a clear message to Beijing through a diplomatic boycott. Critics also question the value of sponsoring an event that won't be selling tickets to the public due to the pandemic curbs. But corporate executives have few good options as they are pulled between the world's two largest economies, stay silent, and risk alienating consumers in places like the US pull back and potentially damage their prospect in the vast Chinese market. International companies are familiar with the risk. Last year, Nike, H&M, and other Western brands faced a boycott in China because of a stand they took against the alleged use of forced labor in Xinjiang. And in 2019, comment made by the Houston Rockets, then general manager in support of pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong, threatened billions of dollars in business between the NBA and China. The sensitivities leave companies treading on thin ice, according to Dipanjan Chatterjee, a vice president and principal analyst at Forrester in charge of brand strategy. He describes the upcoming games as an upside down Olympics. This is very unusual year, Chatterjee told the CNN Business. Typically at this time of the year, all the brands are all agog with the excitement because the Olympics is right around the corner. Instead, what we found is that they've retreated into their shells. People in personnel protective kit walking past a Winter Games display on Wednesday in Beijing. Mark Dimasio, a founder and creative chief of Digo, an advertising agency in New York, said the sponsors appeared to be downplaying their involvement, at least in the lead up to the games. You don't see the typical promotion of their Olympics advertising in advance. We've typically seen it at this time, and we're not, he said. I think they are trying not to make themselves the story. Rising tension. The U.S. was also the U.S. was soon joined in its diplomatic boycott by the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, and Denmark, which each announced they would not be sending any government delegations to the event, citing human rights concerns in China. Japan and Netherlands have also said their senior officials will not attend, though they have not described their actions as a boycott. China, for its part, has called on the international community to politicize sports and warned that countries could pay the price for their mistaken act. The Chinese government has also repeatedly and vehemently denied all allegations of human rights abuses. But for businesses, the diplomatic firestorm set off a gigantic scramble, according to Damasio. There were lots of last night Zoom calls and meetings as advertisers tried to figure out what to do, he said, referring to the aftermath of the US boycott. A worker cleaning a section of the Olympic Green in front of the Beijing Olympic Tower on Wednesday. Even before then, pressure was rising. Sophie Richardson, China Director of Human Rights Watch, said her team wrote an open letter to Coca-Cola last May asking if it had conducted a human rights review in China in light of its participation in the Games. Coke did not respond, which was disappointing, Richardson said, arguing that the company was demonstrating double standard. It will defend voting rights, for example, in the United States, where it's relatively easy and cost-free, and presumably in their calculations, so maybe makes them look even better, she added, referring to Coca-Cola's intervention after a controversial voting law in Georgia was passed last year. But they won't talk about the total lack of voting rights inside a place like China. Asked about the matter by U.S. Senate Tom Cotton last year, an executive said that Georgia was the company's home state, where many of our employees live and work. We are most engaged on policy issues here at home, but we're clear in our respect for human rights globally, said Paul Lally, Coca-Cola's global vice president of human rights. Threading carefully. Experts say the Olympics' top partners collectively pay billions of dollars to sponsor the Games, including fees paid to organizers and additional marketing costs. But analysts suspect their advertising push this year might be a lot more muted than that number would merit. There is a speculation that a whole bunch of these brands have brought premium and spots for the Olympics are going to run generic messaging, Chatterjee said, referring to standard advertisements that were not created specifically for the event. I mean, that is mind boggling, right? Chatterjee added. They have paid a premium, they have paid top dollar to be associated with this incredible equity of the Olympics, he said, suggesting they'd have to backtrack to avoid controversy. Not everyone sees it that way. Rob Pratchmark, who runs the film 21 marketing and helped create the International Olympic Committee Global Partnership Program nearly 40 years ago, said he had a hard time believing that sponsors would end up spending hundreds of millions of dollars and not use the Olympic brand. The research still says it has so much equity and pull at the heart, not just here in the States, but in China, in Japan, in Korea, in France, he said. The companies realize that the upside potential is greater than the downside risk. The Coca-Cola dancers taking part in the interactive exhibition at the train station in Jiangsu, China. Credit Coca-Cola. To be sure, sponsors weren't holding back within mainland China. Over the last several weeks, brands have seized the opportunity to connect with consumers on the ground, with Coca-Cola, Visa, and Procter and Gamble all rolling out promotional campaigns. CNN Business reached out to the all 14 top Olympic partners for comment. Most did not respond, while Intel and China's Man New Diary declined to comment. Procter and Gamble unveiling a beauty salon for athletes in the Olympic Village. Atos, a French IT company, said it would not comment on issues outside of our role as worldwide IT partner and fully abides by the IOC's strategy to human rights, in addition to our own ethics and compliance program. Coca-Cola said its top executive won't be at the games due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the scheduling conflict with its upcoming earnings without commenting further. Allianz, a German insurer, said that it was focused on the achievement of the athletes, while Swiss watchmaker Omega said that it planned to concentrate on the ensuring that each result is measured with the utmost precision. Precision. Addressing the issue. Some companies, however, have tried to address the elephant in the room. Last July, a U.S. Congressional Commission summoned American companies to the hearing to address their commitment to human rights in China and the risk of being associated with the games. Executives from Airbnb, Coca-Cola, Intel, P&G, and Visa testified, each noting that they were long-term partners with the IOC and not focused on any particular set of games. We do not believe our sponsorship degrades our global commitment to human rights, said Steve Rogers, Intel's general counsel. Our sponsorship is not an endorsement of any specific host country or its government, nor an acceptance or approval of domestic activities that may take place within that country. Some companies have even met our activists. Last October, Allianz spent time with campaigners from a World Uyghur Congress, according to Jumretai Arkin, the group's program manager. The organization says it represents the interest of the Uyghurs, an ethnic minority group in Xinjiang that the United States and other allege is a victim of China's human rights violation. Arkin said the organization, along with the Tibetan human rights group, had reached out to all Beijing Olympic sponsors and find that Allianz was the only company willing to meet with us. An activist protesting outside an Allianz office in Berlin, Germany. During the meeting, a former Uyghur teacher in detention camp and a former Tibetan political prisoner shared their past experience with the Allianz representatives, according to Arkin. In a statement to CNN Business, Allianz said that we consider dialogue with civil society organizations to be very important. We have been in exchange with such organizations on our sponsorship in recent months and know their expectations towards the sponsors, to the company added, without elaborating further. The big picture. Still, there is a broad recognition that this isn't likely to be the first or last controversy with the Olympics. Observers point to the Berlin Games in 1936, Moscow in 1980, Salt Lake City in 2002, and even Beijing in 2008 was also having been highly politicalized. Companies know that if they are going to be a sponsor of the games, that there are going to be protests and boycotts. It happens just about with every games, said Rick Button, a sports management professor at Syracuse University, who was chief marketing officer for the U.S. Olympic Committee for the 2008 Beijing Games. I think they take the stance that they've got to operate regardless, he added. Brands also typically lock themselves into deals that can stretch out over a decade, according to Prismark. Some of these companies have a contract now through 2032, some 2028, he said. And so they kind of flow with the tide, meaning there are some games that are great, some games are not that great, but they realize that they are in it for the long haul. CNN Beijing Bureau Emiko Juzuka and Chris Liakos contributed to this report.